understand why it would make our children at higher risk for HIV/AIDS, for the human papillomavirus, for which we are struggling in our country to immunize girls, because this is the leading cause of cervical cancer in adult women, and of course teen pregnancy. And then the violence against children. I think that this is the first time that we've ever seen such a degree of teen dating violence. In fact, 2 years ago, for the first time, our country had to establish the first national teen dating violence hotline. This is a good example, the case out of Richmond, California, just last year, of a young girl who was leaving a homecoming dance, and I'm sure you all remember this case, who, when she went out of the gymnasium at her school, instead of being able to get to her father, who was waiting for her to pick her up afterwards, she was brutally raped by numerous people, and an assault that lasted 2.5 hours. But what I also want you to notice is that in this particular case, we see what is another component of adult pornography exposure, and that is voyeurism. That need to look all the time, because in this particular case, not only did many of the other people who were around not report this crime in action, many actually took pictures of it with their cell phones. That's a good example of how voyeurism and adult pornography has affected us.
There is a phenomenon known as the bystander effect. I've also heard it referred to as spectator syndrome, or rarely it's referred to as the Genovese syndrome. And the prominent example of that is Kitty Genovese, a woman who was murdered in New York in 1964, who as many as 38 people in her apartment complex witnessed various moments of her murder rape and didn't call the police. And I found out about this because it was actually the inspiration for the Harlan Ellison story, The Whimper of Whipped Dogs. But as a sociological phenomenon, it's really incredible that apparently the more people there are watching something, an emergency situation happen, the less likely any of them are to rush in and try to intervene or try to help the people involved. Dr. Cooper makes a very, very ambiguous statement here. Looking up that incident that she describes, the main suspect was 19-year-old Manuel Ortega. Was arrested, well, not the main suspect, but he was arrested soon after he fled the scene and will face charges of rape, robbery, and kidnapping, the police said. So he was within the age of adulthood. Furthermore, she ascribes her own interpretation to the actions of these people. And it's people. It's hard to say. Some of them were teenagers, some of them apparently were fully grown adults. But she ascribes all of these actions to the existence of pornography. That if apparently what we're supposed to infer from all of this is that if pornography were removed from society, if we had no pornography, then people would not get inspired to do things like this. Well, here's a really good little history lesson for you, Doc. Rape, gang rape, and public indifference have all existed since the beginning of human history. To say that you can remove something from society and we'll all be better is to chop at the foundation of a society, no matter what that thing is. People who wish to live in a society have to learn responsible social behavior. There is a chance that little children who don't understand fully the consequences of their actions may try to emulate things that they see on TV or in movies, and may hurt somebody or embarrass somebody or themselves or whatever. That might happen. It's entirely possible that might happen. But if you're a teenager and you're standing around watching a young woman being raped and beaten, fuck that. You're old enough to know better. And if you don't know better, then your parents ought to be arrested too. That is absolutely inexcusable. There is no excuse for that whatsoever. And what happens is when you try to push that off on whatever your pet cause is, then what you're doing is condoning what happened. You're saying that the people who committed that act were not responsible for what they did. They were just being possessed by things that were beyond their control, and their good thinking and their good judgment and their good decision making was overridden, and they were taken over by these evil forces that made them do this. You are condoning the people who raped that girl and beat her and robbed her. You are the one who is condoning that, and that is absolutely sick and disgusting. You can't have a society that has no personal responsibility and the death penalty. We live in a society that requires that every adult human being and every child, to increasing degrees as they grow up, take responsibility for their actions. As far as I'm concerned, and I don't make the laws, but as far as I'm concerned, if that happened, and I was the father of the girl that was assaulted that way, I'd be after every one of those kids and their parents, probably with a shotgun. There is absolutely no excuse for anyone to behave that way. To do it is vile. To stand around and watch is disgusting. I don't care what I don't care what external forces in society motivated you to do it. When you start looking at it like that, then you start giving these people an easy way out. Oh, I was beaten up as a child, my father didn't love me, blah, 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 blah. You start letting them play the victim. Oh, they were overpowered by forces beyond their control. Fuck that, and fuck you.
The American Psychological Association has provided for us an excellent task force report on the sexualization of girls. And it has helped us to understand that over these last 10 or 12 years, girls have changed in their thinking. They are beginning to see themselves as having their only value in their sexuality. The APA tells us that when a child takes this belief system to heart, they no longer feel as if they're okay if they're straight A students or if they're gifted musicians or athletes. Instead, if they're not sexy, they're not okay. And what the APA tells us is that this is what we refer to as sexual self-objectification. And when a child sees herself as a sexual object, she is no longer able to demand the kind of respect that she deserves and which all of us deserve in this country.
Yes, there is a tremendous amount of pressure on girls and women to focus on looking good and being nice looking for the men so that they can snag a good husband and start crapping beautiful babies and blah, blah, blah. Yes, that exists, and that is an extraordinary problem. And we need to combat it not by taking pornography away or by discouraging girls and women from exploring and discovering their sexuality, but by teaching them to integrate their sexuality into their persona so that it's a more complete part of who they are rather than this other alien, ambient, deviant thing. Do you really think that pressure to look pretty for the guys is a new phenomenon that's sprung up since the advent of modern pornography? Fuck, I mean, did they not have cheerleaders at the high school you went to? Of course, I'm assuming the high school you went to had more than one room, but anyway.
So the harm to children promotes the normalization of sexual harm to children and youth. It supports the sexualization of girls. It promotes faulty concepts of sex without commitment, unsafe sexual practices, and violence against women. But there's one more thing that adult pornography does that isn't so much about children in the manner that I've spoken. And that is, when we think about adults who are looking at adult pornography, when they look at adult pornography, we know that it is sometimes a plan of action for child sexual abuse.
You're saying that adults who watch adult pornography depicting adults are doing it so that they can learn how to molest children. Logic train, ding, 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 ding.